Even now?
Hey, Chris.
Okay. You're right. Wait for everybody to join us. I'm sure there's going to be people trickling in. Just a mo. In fact, where is everybody? There's like 20 people in the room 1 second ago. But
Who would have guessed this breakout session would have won the biggest audience today?
well, I'm seeing just 4 people. Where's everybody else?
Uh-oh. I
Is that
see 26 people.
Oh, that's good. Good. So, okay, fine. Good.
You probably only see the people with cameras, but there's a lot of people.
That could be
around.
it.
Yeah.
I'll give you 5 people.
Oh, there you go.
Thanks, Carl. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. So there's a couple of slides that I didn't include in that presentation just to make it not too confusing and try to simplify things down a little bit. But maybe some questions on people's minds are, well, how much is a fixed reward? Right? What does that mean? So let me try to address a couple of those things. And I appreciate people's input and patience and everyone's opinions for sure. So give me just a sec. I've got Lorenzo here. Lorenzo, do you want to just say a quick hello? Introduce yourself to the community at large. You're on mute, mate. Oh, you should be. Oh, your headphones are run out of that. Got it. Not yet. Ah, I see. Your headphones have conveniently run out of battery. I'm just joking.
Test.
There we
Hello.
go. There we go. You're back in the room.
Yeah, they didn't want me to speak. Yeah, I was saying hey, hi to everyone. I'm Lorenzo. I am one of Chris' colleagues. I am the product designer that is helping here to make some improvements. And if I'm here today to help answer any detailed questions, hopefully we'll get a lot and also collect any feedback so that we can make improvements.
Okay, so tell me if you can see this slide pack. See this slide? Get a little nod of the head.
Yep.
Ace. Okay, so this is mainly the slide I wanted to show, but I didn't want to cover too much because it's maybe a bit too much detail. So let me just cover this point first, and then we can dive into some discussion. So currently, the way that the community review budget has been for the previous funds is typically it's been 4% of the budget allocated for proposal assessments or community reviews, as we're calling, and 1% of the budget for VPAs or level 2 moderators, so to speak. So part of the challenge there has been that up until now, a really small number of people have taken the lion's share of the rewards by having unbound amounts of work that they're able to do. And that's a challenge in and of itself. And we want to increase the distribution of work and create these conditions where people have an understanding of what they're likely to receive, or at least are able to understand what the sort of pathway to progression is so that they can have really predictable rewards. So the idea here is that with level 1s, so those that are reasonably experienced or more experienced than new assessors or those that have only done a few reviews, there'll be a reward of, we're proposing around about $12 an ADA per review. And this seems like a reasonable amount for people's sort of time and attention. And one of the open questions that I have for everybody is, what do we feel about this number? Is it too high, too low? That's one question. So the other kind of part to this as well that I want to just sort of unpack is, well, how does this 4%, how is it made up? And what we're sort of suggesting, and this isn't the first iteration to the scheme that's been researched. There's been an awful lot of research work in the background to look at different schemes and different schemas and methods of being able to, prevent Sybil attacks without having to do a significant amount of development work and introduce DIDs right now. But we obviously hope for them to come. And the model that's been proposed is that of this up this 4%, it's going to be split into two. 20% of that budget is going to be made available for level zeros and for those reviews that get into this level 0 pot. And then the 80% would be a fixed amount of, say, as we said, up to about $12 in ADA, if that's the decision that we go on. So for this 80%, you can be guaranteed receiving, say, $12 in ADA per review up to, say, for example, 80 reviews completed. So we know we have a really good understanding as to how many reviews proposal assessors have done in the past. And the vast majority of them do very few. And then there's a much smaller portion in the middle, which do, somewhere between 20 to say 70 reviews. And then you've got a really, really, really small number of people that do a lot more than that. So the idea here is that if you want to do more than 80 reviews, that's absolutely fine. But anything over and above a certain threshold, so for example, for the purposes of this slide, 80 reviews, then anything over and above that will then go into the additional pot of rewards, which is this pool of 20%. And then, the idea around how do we prevent Sybil attacks, if you wanted to go out and create 100 different wallet accounts or new assessor ID accounts or reviewer accounts, that's fine, or it could be fine in terms of it's possible in this current scheme, but ultimately it's diminishing returns. So the more reviews that are in this pot of level 0, the less per review that's going to be rewarded. So that's some of the general context that I wanted to give. It's additional to what we just presented. Maybe that helps to answer 1 or 2 questions, but I'm really keen to turn it over to you guys to either feedback with thoughts and feelings or questions on the scheme so far. So Torsten.
I'm going to be very honest with you guys. I think depending where you are from a location perspective, barrier in itself, you have to have 20 reviews even kind of to make it into L1. That's even below, I'm assuming the time effort which kind of I spent in the past, which was about 45 minutes to an hour per review if you do it properly. That's even below minimum wage. So that's kind of like that category in itself is a strong pull, not even to bother. On the L1 side, $12 is pretty close to minimum wage, at least where I am. So what it actually means is that it incentivizes areas where kind of like the income structure is different, is lower, which is fine. I don't have an issue with that one. But it also shies away people who might have some experience and knowledge, because actually they would just do it for the love of it. Yeah, and it's by no means a compensation, which you would get if you do kind of a normal job. So it's probably I'm very blunt. It's probably better to deliver in the UK food with Deliveroo than do reviews.
So
to make more money.
That's a really fair point, and good to sort of couch for sure. Obviously, there are quite a lot of proposals where I'm sure it doesn't take 45 minutes to an hour to review.
And and that depends actually kind of like what quality do you want to get for the money you're going to spend. Yeah, so if you want to have someone doing something really thorough, and I'm honest, I probably fall into the L0 category because it took me an hour for each one, and I submitted, I think, the last round 3 or 4 because I said I don't have the time to spend, and I didn't know what the outcome is. Now I know what the outcome is, and that's kind of like it would be for the love of it, to be very honest.
So, sorry, Torsten, what do you mean you've submitted the last 3 or 4 and you know?
Then in the last round, I submitted 2 or 3 reviews, and the reason for that, it took me an hour, so it spent 3 hours on it, and it was unclear actually how the compensation would look like. So that one isn't actually an improvement, that you kind of can take a deliberate decision whether you want to spend the time on it or not. I just think $12 an ADR would disqualify a lot of people who kind of make on the normal living scale a significant higher amount. And I appreciate that this is depending on the area we're living in the world. And I don't want to dismiss that $12 might somewhere else be quite a good salary. Yeah.
Lorenzo, you got your hand up. I wonder whether you want to add to that point or...
Yes, definitely. I think that's a very fair point, as you said. I think probably one element that we might dive a little bit deeper also is the type of work required. Of course, in a place where you are doing an assessment, the required effort is one type, but as you need to provide a review, so you need to kind of, yes, you still need to read through everything and you need to understand what the proposal is about, but probably since the required outcome is an opinion, is a review, that also changes a little bit the dynamics of the effort that might be required. So I don't know if Chris, you want to like double click also a little bit on the on the elements that do change a little bit in the actual work.
Yeah, in terms of the voting app, is that what you mean, or how do you mean?
Yeah, that's definitely like on one side on the voting app, but also the kind of scoring rubric elements and all the actual required work that a PA would need to do to go through the actual proposal that could change like slightly.
Yeah, I don't want to cover the proposal submission today. But you know, the intention is that, yeah, there'll be a more objective rubric so people can feel confident that they understand what a 1 means versus what a 5 means. And yeah, I will come back to that point another time for sure, whether it's next week or in the next couple of weeks for sure. But I'm also really conscious that I think that proposal submission form and the scoring rubric will really benefit from going through a round of community feedback anyway. So we'll be sharing that and asking for those that are interested to contribute to come to the table with their thoughts and feelings for sure. We will double click into the voting app in a bit. But yeah, I'm just conscious of getting some creative juices going and people's questions flowing before we dive in with any more demos. Tom, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to build on what Torben said, that for people in the developing world, this is quite a lot of money, actually, depending where it is distributed. In some places, maybe not so much. But my biggest concern is what stops some bad actor now creating 50, 100 accounts so they can go through all the reviews, copy and paste, tweak it slightly using AI. Take all of those resources that could otherwise be distributed to people we could onboard in these lower income countries. Like, what stops that from happening?
So what's stopping people from being onboarded? I'm not sure.
No. What stops me creating 50 accounts under different names and pseudonyms and claiming the 6 ADA per variable reward for each one that I submit times 50, and then doing it again for level 1? And is the answer centralized moderation? And how would you track that down? How would you figure that out? Well, I mean, it's a leaky ship once again.
Centralized moderation if there are many people from around the world working towards a common goal.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So let me just make the question really simple so that we can get a really simple answer.
Uh-huh.
Remember when Hosky put out that tweet and he said there's this really easy way to break Project Catalyst? What stops someone creating 100 of these variable assessor accounts and getting this, $6, $12, $1 times the number of reviews, an infinite number of times or as many times as they can? What's stopping that from happening?
Sure. Well, I don't think that they would be part of the level ones to start with. They certainly wouldn't be part of level ones within Fund 10 in the next fund. Right?
Oh, so this is okay. So it's not a fresh slate. This is basically the VCAs and CAs that were scamming us last time and now getting higher rewards this time.
I don't think they're getting higher rewards. If anything, this is a real significant drop in the amount of rewards that people are receiving per review.
Okay, that makes sense.
I mean, to sort of tackle your point head on, the efforts required to then go and create all of these new IDs to participate, we'd like to think that it's actually not worth people's while to do. Now, that's not to say that it can't be done, and we'll have to sort of see once the data is available what impact it's actually had. But again, the idea here is to provide people with a reward and incentive to participate and to contribute, have a large number of moderators that have a good idea of what the role really is, not have them carte blanche, just discount and eliminate people's hard work just because, it's one non-expert tackling someone's non-expert opinion. And then those flags, they need to be reviewed, right? So the idea would be that perhaps at the point where there's this understanding of what reviews have been flagged and why, and the moderators make their sort of suggested approach, at that point we then have a look at spinning up a technical committee panel to review the work done and then make a decision on what happens next. But I think as a starting point, looking to make it less worthwhile to try to, I think let's step back a second. In previous funds, there was unbound rewards that you could earn.
Sure. So it's an improvement.
Yeah.
And
the idea is to make it not as worthwhile to pursue that type of approach.
Okay.
And to be able to create, some metrics and measures where these flags can be raised in sort of an automated way that then can be checked by, a round of moderators.
Sure. And the moderators, what are they ruling on? Are they ruling on the relevance of it, the quality of it? If AI is used, what if someone from the developing world goes through this entire process, then finds that because they used an AI language model to do their Google translating or whatever, those people then get all of their rewards squashed or they get their reviews not counted? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so the intention is to have one of the scripts would be to look at whether there is AI in use, and then there is going to be some steps to be taken to evaluate whether is this someone from the developing world that doesn't write in English, right? And if that is the case, then we have that data within the team, right? It's not necessarily that we're going to be making that data available to.
So you guys know the identity of every single one of the reviewers, basically.
Always have done.
Okay, cool. Oh, brilliant. Okay, interesting.
Lorenzo, do you want to chip in?
Yeah, on the previous point that Thomas made, which is really really valuable. So about the so you were mentioning, Tom, that there is still going to be within these level 1 PAs those potential not good like actors, right? That might play around it. I mean, that's something that we need to be aware of. It's going to be like that. We can block all the bad like actors. However, this puts a limit, as Chris was saying. On one side, is not the silver bullet, but it's like an iterative improvement. So on one side, they will have less like incentive to do this. About what you were mentioning for the level 0, it's worth mentioning to clarify that that $6 is the max amount that they can get. It's not the fixed amount. So in theory, if I create like 1,000 accounts, the amount of rewards that I will get is less because I will share the pot with more things. I can still get rewards.
I see. Yeah.
So it's
Okay.
the idea is that if you're new, you're trying to kind of game the system. Well, you're not gonna have a worthwhile to actually do it.
If
right?
the system's being gamed, all of the reward recipients get exponentially fewer rewards, basically.
For the level 0, yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's actually a cool implementation. Well done, chaps.
Thanks, Tom. Lynn, you haven't spoken yet.
Hey guys, I do like the CAT and kind of like anti-gaming system, but just for context, right? Can you guys tell the community why we need the QA step in the first place, and have you considered getting rid of the QA step completely? And potentially, have you considered KYC to get rid of 90% or 80% of civil attacks?
Yeah, good question. On the latter part, KYC, I think, becomes quite prohibitive to then having people participate. You know, in a scenario where maybe we are able to implement DIDs or verifiable credentials or something that's able to attribute identity to an individual without necessarily asking for their government creds, that's a good end state, but we're not there yet, right? Sure, that, and there's, you know, standards I think that need to be created around the use of DIDs, and then, you know, maybe at that point it doesn't become a one DID supplier scenario. It just becomes a scenario where the DID providers need to be able to support a standard. And then, you know, certainly the idea to make sure that these sorts of credentials are interoperable or portable. You know, this is what's all coming, like in the next few months, as you know. To the point of your first question, so if we didn't have some sort of moderator function, forgive my French, we might have a lot of reviews that just say shit, bollocks, bugger, willy, right? And no one really wants that in an interface where, you know, they're trying to make a decision on whether to vote for a proposal or not. That's a really crude explanation of why. But what we certainly noticed is that the VPA role in previous rounds had such a tremendous effect on what was being displayed to the voter. And I think, you know, I've talked about it previously. Over 2/3 of all proposals in Fund 9 scored 4.5 to 5 out of 5. And that was because people either feel a fear of having their rewards slashed and their opinion discarded by the VPAs, or for, you know, an even less favorable reason, right? But if we don't have some level of moderation, and the intention is to obviously have it as decentralized as possible, we open ourselves up to, you know, our unbound content, right? Danny, you've got a view on this, I'm sure.
It's just a real chip. I know there's hands up, so I don't want to take up a space. One other parallel that I like to often think about is the 2017 and 2018 ICO craze, which essentially was asking for funding from thousands and thousands of individuals. And unfortunately, the success to failure ratio, there's been quite tremendously low, in a sense where most of the things that you would actually bank upon, what you would have hoped that the people would have been informed without any sort of having filter in place, meant that people have lost a lot of resources back then. I think it's there's a good testament based on the outcomes to date in terms of like the conversion of the funded projects towards the completion from the total pool, that without having an SSQA stage in current climate up until now, it's probably fair to assume that a lot of the projects may have not delivered, or we would have been overwhelmed with a lot of projects in the space that would have nothing to do with our collective challenges and the intentions. So it's sort of a crutch that has allowed us to maintain some level of validity of the process that comes through it. And it's important to then put it also against the backdrop of it's a framework upon which to build upon. And especially once we start building towards, you may have got some of my musings that I shared also with the team, and we're discussing quite heavily in terms of like what a credentialing in the future could look like. How could you build your reputation? So what you're saying here is like a very first attempt of trying to figure out if somebody enters within the ecosystem, what is the pathway? What is almost career progression that allows them to build a reputation and skills over the long period of time that allows them to go through? So right now we're perhaps talking about level 0 and 1 and 2 within the context of community reviews. Now, could that be applied towards other roles in the future? Maybe the evolution of the challenge teams, at which point you can probably become more familiar with the process and start thinking about, well, maybe I can start auditing the process because I understand it more intimately, and sort of allowing you to have a bit of foresight of like what the future within the ecosystem like Catalyst for any individual could look like. And that's essentially sort of a framework of a direction that we're trying to portray and seek a feedback from.
Thanks, Danny. Who's next? Torsten, I think you had your hand up, and then Harsha.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of have to second a little bit what Nin said. It becomes it becomes a bit strange that on the one hand side we are kind of spending so much effort in a community review and kind of compensate for that, and on the other side we're then kind of trying to hide the review in itself away because A, we don't trust it because it gets played, and B, we don't want to have this to influence the final vote of the voter. So it looks a little bit like that we are pivoting a little bit back to do your own research, which I understand. But then kind of like if the impact of what we're doing here gets more and more diminished, then what is the purpose of it? So do we really need that, or do we have to rethink and kind of perhaps spend this amount of fund in a different way?
Interesting. I think that there's a good argument to be made to experiment here and explore it, and then learn from the data that it produces. And in one fund, we'll have a reasonable understanding of how it played out. And again, you know, as Danny sort of suggested, this is about iterative approaches. And you know, I think we need to be conscious, as I said, that there are that, you know, the feedback that we received from the discovery is are known problems, right? And we're trying to address these known problems head on. And this isn't, like, as I said, the only approach that was considered, but this is the one that seems to be the lowest barrier to implement, and gives us a direction towards credentialing, reputation, and all of these other good Web3 primitives that we would like to see implemented soon enough.
Can I make a last comment on that? I would be totally supportive if it actually kind of is leading into credentialing and is leading into building up reputation to do effectively other type of work in the community. But in a lot of cases, this is just considered as an income stream, and it is pretty detached effectively from increasing the quality of the proposal in itself. So you just reflect on it, and the reflection in itself gets more and more pushed aside through DREPs, through the fact that it's getting hidden. So yeah, so I agree with the credentialing bit. If that's kind of the pathway to it, great. But in its own standing, I think the impact it has is getting less and less.
Harsha.
Since there are maximum reviews that one can do, and also that the rewards are slashed, in case the number of PAs available to do the work is not enough, do you have a contingency in place?
So yeah, it's a really good point. I guess it comes down to what do we consider to be enough, and what seems to be a reasonable level of reviews. Now, up until now, we put a reasonably arbitrary number on how many reviews a proposal should have, right? And you know, this comes from a place of knowing how many reviews are done in sort of professional, traditional grant systems, right? So, you know, 5 reviews seems to be good because you get a broad range of perspectives. Hopefully it's not like one person thinks this way, another person thinks this way, another person, you know, there's some distribution there. But, you know, I think when we think about the fact that this is permissionless and that we have a lot of non-experts participating, and it's a really good onboarding tool, right? Come and get involved in Catalyst, and this is a way that you can learn about the ecosystem. By the way, you get rewarded to participate and give your opinion. Doesn't matter who you are, you can play a role. So at that point, I think we need to be objective as to not what value does does any old person's opinion mean. Everybody has their own opinion. Everybody's opinion is valued, but is technical expertise more desirable, right, to evaluate a proposal? And if we don't have a way today to be able to attribute skills and expertise, and we're happy to, you know, just open the doors to everybody to participate because we want them to be involved, then maybe we don't need to have a minimum amount of reviews per proposal. Maybe it's, you know, if you want to participate and provide reviews and you want to show up and do this, this is available to you. We've also done quite a bit of modeling. Like, Lucio, are you with us, by the way?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Our robot friend Lucio, you might need to reset your mic, mate. So we can talk through some of we can explore some of the modeling, but the point is we know how many proposal assessors there are. There has been 1,784 proposal assessors registered since day one. That's pretty epic, I think, nearly 2,000 people. We know how many participated in last round. We know how many people participated and had an acceptance threshold of 70% or 80%, where, you know, 80% of all of their reviews were scored as good or excellent. We know how many, you know, we know all this data, right? So I can confidently say, if we were to set a bar threshold of, you know, say, for example, 90% of your reviews had to have passed, you know, good or excellent, I know what that number is. So the point is that I think that there's a lot of people that can play a role. There's a lot of people that have a desire to play this role and perform this function. And we hope to grow that pool even more. Like, it'd be great if there's 10,000 people in years to come, or whatever that number. But maybe it shouldn't be of as much importance that there are X number of reviews per proposal. And whether one proposal has 10 reviews or another has 1, maybe that doesn't matter so much. To add to that point, if we have an allocation button, and I can push a button and it automatically distributes all of the work equally to all of those people that have said that they want to participate in this, then we already have a good understanding of, if everybody was to do all of their work, this is how many reviews it's going to produce. I know that was a really long-winded way of answering your question, but I wanted to try to be as comprehensive as possible there to give you the background of the understanding and logic. Jose, I'm going to come to you first, and then Tom.
Thanks, Chris. I was regarding the values of the compensation. I was reading some of the opinions in the chat, and I wanted to give my perspective living in a developing country. I'd say that I mean, if you compare it to a regular salary for someone, $12, you spend half an hour per review, which I think is low. My experience, it's a lot longer than that. But let's say it's only 30 minutes, that would be $24 per hour, which is attractive, but only if you have it on a permanent basis. You can only do 80 reviews per fund. That would be only 300, and you do 4 funds per year. That wouldn't be that, not even $4,000 per year. So my concern is that maybe it's to be able to be a reviewer, a valuable reviewer, and having something to say, you have to spend some time in the ecosystem and gather some experience and wander around. And maybe just $4,000 per year won't worth people's time to have the focus to dedicate a week of their time or 2 weeks of their time every 3 or 4 months to seriously take this as a source of income. So you're attracting not people who want to make this something like a main activity. Of course, it won't be a full-time job for anyone, but to make it serious enough that you can risk stopping something else and dedicating a week or 2 weeks every couple of months.
Yeah,
and you will be attracting people that maybe will be needing it and won't have the skills required to do this properly. So I'd say that even for a developing country, it's not very attractive.
So, okay, so I really hear what you're saying, Jose, and I want to address one of these points. What if there are other roles to play, but you need to almost, have demonstrated that you can perform this function pretty capably first before you then become not a challenge team, but maybe, part of the community review pool that help to verify where the funded projects have delivered their milestones. And, currently that rate per review or that rate per milestone proof of achievement is a fair bit more than $12 in ADA. That's not to say that, it is probably more work. I mean, Torsten's here. I'm sure there's other people here that are able to speak to this as well. Harsha, you're part of the pool of CTs. But my point is that I don't think we should just think of this as the only avenue to explore. That we're trying to build a picture of someone's appetite and capability and interest to sort of continue playing a role. Yeah,
I like what you're saying, Chris, and perhaps it's worth exploring a way to present this as a part of a wider picture in which you can onboard people to fully dedicate their time to the Catalyst and Cardano ecosystem and have several sources of income and just present this as one, but maybe having the context of where you can go to would make it more appealing.
That's really worthwhile feedback. And there's an idea around bounties as well, which we won't unpack today, right? And I don't think we've got we haven't got the slide deck to be able to do that. So if you can give us a couple more weeks, we'll have more on that soon. Tom.
Yeah, listening to Thorsten and Jose, there's really kind of made me reconsider my thoughts on this, and actually I agree with Jose. This isn't even attractive to people in the developing world that much. What we do by incentivizing this is we incentivize by incentivizing the reviews in the first place. We're incentivizing really low quality reviews because people aren't really in it because they care about Cardano. They just want to give a review because they get paid for them, right? They have no vested interest or no stake in the quality of that review at all. Their only stake is, will this review get passed? Right? And if the answer is yes, this review will get passed, then they'll make as many as they can and find every way to get as much money from doing it as they can. You don't win. You can't really bribe people to Caesar bribed people with bread and he won. So maybe you can, but it's not really it doesn't really make sense to try and, if we're trying to expand the ecosystem, are you using this as, and this is more the question that I have, are we trying to use this incentive model as a capture mechanism to get people in the first place, and then we can sell them on why they want to stay and actually do the right thing because of Cardano? Or is this, because this is not and because of the infrequency of the funding rounds as well, this isn't a viable income for anyone, even even in the developing world, because of its inconsistency, right? So with all these things packaged together, plus we're reducing the importance of these reviews anyway. As you said, we're taking the stars off the main page, we're hiding the fact that it's been reviewed at all. It sounds like now this is a bit of a spandrel from an old system. This is just that this funding mechanism is something that we needed during the bootstrapping phase of Catalyst. You had to pay people to do the work early on because people didn't know why to care about it. And we still have inherited that as we get to Fund 10. And don't get me wrong, I think it's a massive iterative improvement on the last time. There are still some obvious holes. I mean, any system that has a moderation system is going, okay, well, these people are the elite class, and the elite class, because they stayed with us long enough because we paid with them to stay with us. That doesn't mean that they care about Cardano. That just means that they stuck along because they were still being paid, right? So when we say, oh, well, this elite level 2 class who can go through and review other people, they've been paid to be in the position they're in, and then they act as gatekeepers for others, right? So honestly, I think that this is a point of centralization in general. I think that the idea of reviewing proposals should be done out in the community. I don't think it should be done through a centralized IO mechanism, right? Because you can't correctly moderate it. But again, there's no incentive for that. There's no. I know. I'm sorry. I'll write it down somewhere and then show you guys.
Well, it's more like the community are doing this in a decentralized manner.
No.
What do you mean?
It's done on idea scale. That's not decentralized. If idea scale goes down tomorrow, or your websites go down tomorrow, it's like. But again, I get what you. Again, we can argue why it's decentralized and why it's not. But again, the reviews moderation side of things. If, as Jose has said, this amount of money is not enough for people in the developing world, and if Torben has said this amount of money is not enough for people in the developed world, right? Then why have you got this? All you're going to do is financially incentivize bad reviews, people to do lots of bad reviews, in theory, and then you'll have the people who don't really care about the money who come in and do it anyway. Well, if there are people who don't really care about the money that will come in and review it anyway, why do we need to incentivize reviews in the first place? That's the question. Sorry.
All really good points. Everybody, so everybody's got a valid opinion on this for sure. Interesting that we presented this scheme to Catalyst Circle yesterday, and it was the opposite. It was that actually $12 an ADA seems to be quite a lot for a review, which I think's an interesting dynamic, right? I think it depends on what the expectation is. If you're expecting this to replace full-time work, it's unlikely to do that. If there's an expectation this is something that you can do as a side gig, and it's because you care about proposals and wanting to provide an opinion and receive some incentive to do so and participate and grow, a picture of reputation that might then help to enable other opportunities. Maybe this might be more for you. Lorenzo, you're keen to jump in, and Danny as well.
Yeah, and I think like Tom makes really good points, and you mentioned a lot of things, so I tried to keep them in my head. I should have written them down. No worries, good. Just try to go back to them. I think like one thing that I wanted to mention is, so you mentioned that people will come here to earn the money, so and they will just write a lot of reviews to get a lot of money, right? So that's like rephrasing in a different way what you said. I think you can definitely see it in that way. That's one option. But another option, or like another view, could be if you do have a high incentive, then you might get a lot of people that just come here for the money. Instead, if you do have a reward, which is fair, high or low, that's depending on the person, then you might have more people that are writing reviews because they're interested in the proposal, they're interested in the subject, and they get a reward for doing so, which is not an incentive, but it's something that it comes as an exercise. So you came here, did a review because you cared about that proposal, you cared about something, and so that could be like another option. The other thing that I wanted to share, which I think is important to also set our brain for context, which Chris mentioned earlier in the presentation in the town hall, is the problem that this is solving. You're right, like this is something that has grown and has like evolved over the years. But the value that this is, like the reason why this was here was to help voters to more easily navigate the different proposals, very long, a lot of proposals. So the the place where we need to get to is like, how do we help voters to understand a little bit what is the proposal about and then decide what to do? And what this can give today in this like iteration is, instead of giving a decision, it gives X amount of data. Like there's some people that think this, you take this information and then you can decide what to do. So there is still value today in this, even if it is like an evolution. And you're right, like we need to get to some point where we have something that it's not necessarily just a small group of people or like a group of people, but it can be open to everyone. But this is a transition, right? This is it's like an iteration. So we need to get there, I think.
I'll email you.
Danny and then Nin.
I was just going to suggest I'll let Nin and I'll come back to this point. I think he's been patiently waiting. Nin, if the hand is relevant, please go ahead.
Sorry, guys, my mouse is being crazy.
You're connected via phone, it shows to me. So maybe that's where you need to unmute. Okay, we'll just give it a minute until you find it. What I was going to say, I think where this scheme starts being quite interesting is that as we're looking through the lenses of onboarding, what other community, actions or events can be incentivized through such leveling. I think we've talked a great deal about how do we help proposers, especially in the first part. And I think that's where a lot of value in the Project Catalyst comes, when people are submitting the ideas and iterating on those ideas, maturing them in such a way that before they come as a part of, they're submitted on the vote, they have a certain level of mentorship almost. And I think when we start looking through it through the lenses of some sort of a almost quote unquote career progression through different levels, we can start thinking about it a bit more broadly, that it's not only about the incentivizing of what is happening in the review stage as we've known it, but also like expanding that logic through other parts of the flow, which arguably need a lot of love. So this is sort of like creating the framework where how can we then expand this towards like the earlier parts of the funding cycles, as we've known it, where there's a lot of proposers who are hungry and in a great need of having that mentorship, and how do we incentivize that? And if we start looking through that, how we can add it into this different leveling and progressions, almost unlocking different levels and seniority of like how people can help each other and collaborate, I think that's where it becomes quite interesting and more powerful. So right now it's zoomed in very much on a very specific portion of a process that we found collectively that hasn't worked to the desired effect or to its point as we've liked in the past. And this brings us to the interim bridge solution to Fund 10 that allows us not to delay Fund any much longer, in that sense that we can implement it fast enough. It does cover some of these issues, obviously not all of them, but then start building a framework that allows bringing in then solutions much more easier from different directions. And I think a lot of those elements that we're speaking here about today will arguably become more understandable with the greater context, which unfortunately we aren't able to share today, but it's coming in a couple of weeks, and then it starts making more sense, because our goal is to create the core that it becomes agnostic, so that we can invite solutions from different directions and start plugging them in, whereas historically that hasn't been the case. It was very much waterfall. We can either run the fund or we can be testing and iterating, and we need to separate those two tracks so that we can test and iterate on the side safely from all these different ideas, and then start plugging them into the stream as a part of it. So I was just going to add that, and I see Nin is off mute, so back to you, mate.
Yes, I'm back. What was the question? Sorry, I was getting teased.
Your hand was up.
Yeah, what question have you got?
Oh, my hand was up. Sorry.
Yeah, I did notice, like I did recognize also one fact that I mentioned it in the chat. One of the elements that beyond the Fund 10 that we're looking into once the framework is set forth is like introducing the concept of credentialing. And I'm sure we're going to have a lot of community conversations and deliberations on that topic. Is that much like today when you're registering for Project Catalyst through the wallet of your choice, because they've met the Catalyst standards in the first place, that you can choose which one to do so. In a similar way, we'll be able to hopefully build a solution in such a way that you choose which credentialing partner you trust. And as long as they're following the standards which are agreed by the Catalyst as a whole, then you're able to interface with them. I just wanted to catch it now that I saw you, Nin. There were comments about your recent breakthrough. So the idea is not to gatekeep, but to then open it up, right? Like we set the standards, and then people can come in and interface. So Snabrillia comes with something, could it be Prism, Roots ID, lots of beautiful solutions, and whichever you trust or whichever you interface with and work with, you'll be able to plug in. So that's sort of like sneak peek of like where we'd like to be heading it forward. And a lot of these instances will make more sense in a couple of weeks to come, but we're trying to unpack a little by little. And today we're sort of very much zoomed in.
Cool.
I
I
have a
want to come to
question
Tom.
for
And
Lorenzo.
then
Yep.
I'd like to invite Lorenzo to do a quick demonstration of the new voting app UI in terms of how. Yeah, sorry. Oh, Nin, sorry, you haven't finished. Excuse me.
Sorry, just a real quick comment. Super excited about the SIP 36 and SIP 68 or 72, the Catalyst governance one. We are building this Nebula wallet, so if there's anything that we can do to help improve Catalyst, we'd love to help. Thanks, guys.
Buy my merch. Sorry. I do have a question for Lorenzo, but I think he's got to show something off first.
Do you want to go first, and then I'll show that so that you don't lose the context?
Thank you. So Lorenzo, if as I know you've had technical involvement in building this, if I were a bad actor, right, and let's say I had a company called Purple Rocket, and Purple Rocket, as companies are, was sociopathic. Our only job, our only intention, is to make as much money for ourselves. Okay, that's our job. We're a company. We don't care about Cardano. We care about what we can get. How much money can we get in exchange for how little work we can do? In the current Catalyst model, how does Catalyst incentivize that sociopathic behavior instead of, I don't know, making people compete together to build the best things they can build, right? And currently it just goes, okay, how much money do you want? You know how it works. And the second part to that question, which should be a bit simpler, is if I was that company and I was able to leverage 100 people, how could I, with 100 people, guarantee that my company gets funding or increase the chance of my company getting funding in the next funding round under this model as it's been redesigned?
As in still managing the case for the other side. Is that what you're trying to say, Tom?
Sorry, I didn't catch that, Chris. What was that?
Are you sort of asking how do we still man the case for why it won't work? Is that what you're sort of suggesting?
No, I'm asking specifically Lorenz, because I know he seems to be very bright on this topic. What attack vectors do you see in this? And what improvements could you see for 11, 12, 13?
Mm-hmm. So let me see if I got the question right. So the first part is in the current system, so not in what we're showing now, but what is happening today. What are the ways in which, as a bad actor, I could earn as much money as possible, like misusing the system? So that's the first part of the question. And the second part is, in this current proposal, how what are the tactics or the ways that prevent me to get my proposal to get funded? Is that right?
I'll make it even simpler to make it easier, because obviously through creating this new system, you've thought about this. What kind of perverse incentives do you think exist in this iteration?
Okay.
And
so
the second one, if I had 100 people at my disposal, what do you think you could do with this current reward mechanism for voting and rating and stuff?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's see if I can answer that. So from what is happening right now, these are the problems that Chris has been kind of talking about. There are different ways in which you can use the system today to earn as much money, meaning, first of all, you have a pot, which is like it's fixed, but then you don't have a fixed amount that you can earn. So if you are just like, if you take the whole pot because you covered everything, right? You don't know, you write as many reviews, then you can, there is a limit of how much money you can earn, but there isn't really a limit for one person. So if you go like this company with a lot of people, that could happen. And this is addressed here by making sure that, yes, we have a pot, but we don't necessarily use the whole pot. The pot is distributed so that the reward is there to incentivize the work of the many. It's not there to incentivize the work of one person or even one malicious group of people, because you don't have that element. You got levels, right? So level 0, level 1, level 2, and that those are distributed. I know that, like Chris, probably we didn't go into a lot of details, but what that does is that those pots are defined. So there isn't a way for you, for even like a bad actor, to earn excessive amount of money as it does happen today. So that's one bit. You were also asking about.
So just tack to the end of that. Also the excessive influence. So if I have 100 people in who get level 0 and my 100 people, I can get them to level 1. Can I then have excessive influence on the reviews? Because now I have more reviews that I can make, and my team that are being instructed by me can make.
So today, yes. So like not today with this.
So that is an attack vector today. Okay.
For what happened in Fund 9, yes, because that's what we like. I can show now in the interface. If you have a lot of people that are submitting a lot of 5 stars review, and the 5 stars review translating something that the voters doesn't understand, which is the star rating, and the voter thinks that that's a star rating from a group of assessors, then well, we see like a correlation, right, between that and the voting. So that you do have a way to do that. The way to solve that is saying, okay, the star review doesn't make a lot of sense to the user because the user believes that the voter believes that that's a good indication of something that is good and something that is bad. And by removing that power that is not the value of assessment, right? The value of assessment is to help people to make to navigate proposal. It's not there to help people make a final decision. Then if you have a company with 100 people that is trying to get a proposal to get funded, then you don't necessarily have any more that power. You can still like influence the voting, but you will really need to get people to get into a proposal and find your like review. And maybe this is a good, you give me a really good segue to share my screen and share a little bit of the interface to add a little bit more context here. But I think I need to get, okay, I got the permissions, that's good. And again, this is like, of course, being this like on an app, I need to show you this on Figma. Actually, let me share something better. Just a second. Yes, okay. I need to show you this on Figma just for this reason. But yeah, so as you all remember right now on the current app, we have the star rating here. So that's the first priming like information. The user comes here, the voter comes here, says, okay, that's 5 star. That's definitely better than like a 3 star. They don't necessarily know what's behind that. So that's the first priming element. And also proposals right now on this view are ranked by the actual star rating. So if I am a bad actor, as you said, I could do as much work as I need to get my proposal to get 5 stars, and that will be the one that is shown on the list. So it's by normal rules of the any type of navigation, every product, you do get to the point. By removing this from here, that information that doesn't have a meaning to the voter, right? Star rating is a consolidated view of those 3 elements of impact, feasibility, and auditability. First of all, we remove this first priming, which is the strongest one. Second thing that we do randomize this order, and then we allow the voter to decide what they want to filter this by or sort this by. So we give options to the voter so that they can decide how they want to explore the different proposals. Then we go a step further. So when we get into the actual proposal, as you remember, we have right now the star rating here at the top. So that's the first information that a voter gets right now. So like, again, we are saying this is a good proposal, that's a bad proposal, which doesn't mean much to the voter. Instead, what we are proposing here is that first, have a read about the problem, have a read about the solution. Then if you want to know more, and again, this could like also like evolve, then I want to know more about what reviews are inside here. Okay. Also seems to be like in this prototype, there seems to be like a mistake in the copy. But yeah, I want to know more. Let me know let me understand what is the impact that people think about this proposal. Okay, I think that the impact is 3 out of 5, and I can understand more, and I have also the option that's also kind of exists today to read more. But the point here is that we're providing data, right? We're not providing a pre-decision. We're not telling this is a good proposal, that's a bad proposal. We're saying there's a group of people, 1, 5, 20, that have checked this. They gave their like opinion, they gave their like scoring, and now you can make your own idea. And this is also where we should get through in like a trajectory. We should provide data to the voters so that they can get a better opinion more quickly. And I will stop here and get any feedback or comment.
Lorenzo, very quickly, I love how candidly that you've presented, hey, we're using UI UX to solve this problem because that's the framework within which you're limited to fix it with, which is a really good thing. One thing that I would suggest is, because we know that reviews have been gamed in the past, and because we should be honest as a community, would it not make sense to put a small red disclaimer above community reviews saying that, you know, these may not be by professionals, or you guys can pick the language for it, but just to clarify that this has happened before and we're trying to resolve it.
Yes, you're 100% right. It's so for now, yeah, we should add more copy. Like for example, we are clarifying that this is proposal reviews and is the potential impact on the Cardano ecosystem. So yeah, we can definitely add more copy. It's definitely something that we can like iterate on. Yeah, it's very
reviews may be unreliable, all in red. That's a
yeah, or just yeah, these are people's individual opinions, right?
Exactly.
And don't necessarily come from a position of expertise. But that's not to diminish people's opinions. Like, this is the point. It's valuable. And if people are going to spend time doing this, then maybe there should be something that they receive for spending time. Torsten.
Yeah, I just wonder. I mean, I break a little bit out now out of this. I think it becomes the information is there, but it's hidden so far down the road that people probably realistically will not be able to do that in a quantitative way. So kind of like if you look at the amount of proposals we're having, how deep you have to click just to even get to the information will lead to the fact that the randomness in itself is probably driving mechanisms outside of the app, which is almost like a lobbying for, hey, have you seen my proposal? It's doing this or that, rather than anything else. What I'm interested in is there any data-driven evidence that proposals in itself, which have a high rating, always or also get funded? Because I think that whole mechanism was broken in Fund 9. It was kind of like irrelevant how high you were rated or how low, whether the rating was valuable or not. Even if you were rated high, it didn't mean anything at the end of the day. There were proposals with a very high rating, whether rightfully or not, which didn't get funded, and other proposals with a very low rating who got funded. So there seems to be kind of not a relation to that anyhow.
Yeah, if I can answer to this point, I think it's so I would add two things here. So the in general rules of kind of navigation, it's common that the first elements that you see are the one that are you're more likely to like explore, and of course this priming element that I mentioned before, like if you got 5 stars versus 1 star, one definitely looks better. Now this is like general rule, and it seems to play out here. So we have data that show that there is a correlation between proposals that get funded and the high rating. So that was just like a confirmation of this general rule. But yeah, there is data that shows that.
Okay. I mean, if it's random, what you get presented with, my personal take on that one is, I would say, okay, so don't even bother with the reviews. Do your own research upfront, and more or less kind of it goes then to lobbying of the different projects. And it will probably lead to the fact that people cannot be bothered at all anymore and just give it to a DREP and say, oh, don't worry. I mean, it's just too much work for me kind of to get to the point. If there's no indication for me anymore to say, why should I look at this? Then yeah, why should I bother?
I think, but like if you don't have anything like outside, based on what do I click on it, basically.
Yeah,
right?
you have to do your own research anyhow, kind of like on 1100 proposals. How many pages, how many links do you, and take it away now from Catalyst, how many links on Google search are you going to click? Are you really going to click through to the page 35 to find out, is this the information I want to have? No, you look at the first or the second page. So it's become a little bit of a lottery now, effectively. And the information, which in the past was at least intended to guide, is hidden now away. So at the end of the day, it's kind of like pretty much the lottery of how many people get looking at what. And if that might satisfy some, and I think people will just move away and then kind of say, either I cannot be bothered, they give it to a DREP, they know what they're doing, which kind of circumvents this whole system of rewards on that. I appreciate what we said before. It might be an entry element for credentialing. That's a different story. Or I say it's how do I get to the point where I can make a decision, because I'm just deciding effectively on a slice of information which I can really process in the time I have to make a decision. Yeah. And then there is another element. I mean, I don't know whether that's so true, which is related to the amount of proposals you have to vote for to get funds. I don't know, that came up somewhere in this DREP discussions. Perhaps someone can confirm or not. So if I have to vote for a certain amount of proposals anyhow, and it's hard for me to get the information, and I'm just driven by the incentive, I'm just going to click the first 30 and say, okay, thank you very much, I get my money, which kind of is totally derailing the whole intent which we had behind this.
Yeah, I mean, Torsten, to sort of address that point around like threshold, that's an idea for Catalyst DREPs as opposed to the general voter. So voter rewards are based on.
I think I saw one presentation where it said it is 30 for the common voter and 60 for a DREP, but it might have been kind of an early stage draft version and it's not sustained itself.
Yeah, I mean, and to the point around how do we mitigate from people just getting bored and not and helping to encourage them to seek out other proposals. I don't think they need to go to page 30 or, you know, scroll hundreds and hundreds of proposals, but we need to make it super easy for people to find proposals that they want to vote on.
Exactly.
So, you know, by helping to create better sort of filter views or sorting views, we sort of leave it to the user to determine what.
I get it. I get it. I think if it would be tied more into this whole process and not just tied into the voting in itself, like you read a proposal somewhere at an early stage and that's kind of really cool. It would be absolutely fantastic to favorite that one so that when you come to voting, you can say, okay, I probably favorite 20, let me go through this 20, rather than randomly get presented by effectively good or bad quality of stuff. Or stuff where you say, why do you present me the 15th proposal on technical stuff? I'm really not interested. I want to do something which has impact.
I will answer just really quickly a couple of points, and then I'll pass it to everyone that has the hands raised. I think, Torsten, you make a very good point. Like, if like the idea, the end goal is to be able to, as you said, like this is a process, so the voters should be able to come at the beginning of the process and be able to have all this information beforehand, so they don't just kind of come here when there is voting and then they need to kind of go through a lot of things and understand what is the things that they liked and find them again. So that's true. So this is definitely like a transition. It's like an iterative step. We need to get to that point. But just mentioning how the voters or users in general navigate to things that they're like interested in. We don't necessarily come here as an average voter and just look at all the proposals. Like people have different like interests. They might look for the, I don't know, based on the amount of money that it has, based on the topic, based on the challenge. So there is, before you get to an actual list of proposal for the navigation, you have a filter, a natural filtering that does happen. And yes, like one feedback that you gave is very, very, very valuable. Like when you get to the proposal, we need to test again and refine this together. Like, where is the right place for these community reviews? Is it less prominent at the bottom, still somehow prominent at the top? Does that still give some type of priming? So, but yeah, I think let's keep in mind how users navigate through this. And I'll shush here because there is a lot of people with the hand raised. And
Danny,
I don't know what's
do you want to add to that, or
Yeah, I was just going to level set just for the room. I would suggest to give a bit of a time frame ahead of us. We've been at it for about an hour or so. Very, very cool conversations and debates. I would like to time box us for the next 15 minutes before we conclude the session today. Obviously, we're going to capture all of these elements. I see, Tom, you have a hand up. If you can hang on for a second. I'd like to hear from Tommy and Vanessa respectively afterwards, since they haven't spoken today, and just to give them an opportunity to express. And then if we still have time, let's get back to you, Tom and Nin, if that's okay. So, Tommy. And if you're speaking, Tommy, the mic wasn't working. Still doesn't work. It's okay. Let's give you a moment to refresh. We'll come back to you, Vanessa. Floor's yours.
Yeah, I just wanted to take it off on a different tack. And can we talk about this idea that level 1 assessors will be allocated the proposals that they review? I mean, I know a lot of people support this and have done for ages, but in my view, it's a terrible idea. I mean, it incentivizes people feeling obliged to review proposals that they know nothing about, and it's just not going to help. I was wondering, what about if PAs or whatever we're going to call them, reviewers, signed up and said which challenges they want to review in, at least?
That's the idea, Vanessa. You hit it nail on the head.
Can you double click on it, Chris,
Yeah,
just
so
to
the
give it a
idea
bit of a
would be,
context?
yeah, as you're signing up, you'll be presented with the challenges. You select which challenges you feel comfortable assessing in, and then you're allocated based on which challenges you want to work within. You know, I think as a starting point, we should be sensible and not, you know, give the facility just to select every single challenge. That's an idea. It's not necessarily the approach. But certainly, you know, of the 10 challenges that are up for Fund 10, if you could choose half of them, then would that give you some comfort? I mean, I'm asking you directly, Vanessa, would that give you some comfort that you're sort of determining which workload that you're going to do and it's not being forced upon you?
Comfort's a funny word to choose, but I mean, you know, it still leaves me wondering a little bit, and I know this is not resolvable at the moment. If somebody says, oh, I want a review in this challenge, and they've got no clue about it, what do we do?
Yeah,
you know,
it's a good question. I mean, that's probably part of the case today anyway, isn't it?
I mean, not entirely, because I do think that people in the past, they would select mainly proposals that they had some interest in or that they knew something about. Not universally, as we see from some of the reviews that things get, but I don't know. I mean, I suppose you've answered the question of how you're going to address that, and I guess we see how it works. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a very fair comment, especially now when we start thinking about down the line, you know, depending on your credentialing, what your interests are. I think that could also help with determining which projects and proposals you could be more suitable in addressing. But yeah, it's an absolutely valid point, and thank you for sharing. Let's try you, Tommy, again. Let's see
Blah,
if
blah,
the
blah, blah, blah.
blah 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 right back at you. Good to have you here with us, Tommy.
It worked.
Go
All
ahead.
right.
It's good to hear your voice.
Yeah, what I was trying to say is that Vanessa can go first, so it worked. So the like it for me, it's a little bit hard to understand like the whole like context, because it seems that there's more changes coming and we're just told to sit down and wait and something cool will come down the line. So without knowing like what all changes are coming, it's hard to say, like criticize or be supportive of this thing. Like, okay, I like the UI changes, yeah, good job. And yeah, maybe the new incentive system might be more simplistic and maybe it works, who knows. But if it's still the same, like 3 months, one fund, massive amount of proposals, no one wants to read through those D-reps or not, then I don't know if it's going to serve the purpose. What I've been lobbying for before is this idea of continuous thing without funds, that the proposals could be in different stages and whatnot. But if you don't like that, then at least something like have categories for $5,000 and $50,000 and $500,000, and just get quickly done with those 5,000 ones and like push them, get them going and make them come back for the 50,000 and whatnot. Just like make it more agile, because it doesn't make any point to wait for 3 months for the next fund and see if you have a suitable challenge there and all that. So it would be nice to know like what else is planned for this process.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Danny, did you want to chip in on that?
I just wish we could talk more about it. Like, I think we're eager. We've been in the trenches for so long. Actually, talking to many, like Lorenzo, has spent countless hours and days collectively in different discovery sessions, whether it was individual one-on-ones and everything. And it's like it's sort of like a lot of that aggregation of the learnings and whatnot. And we're starting slowly to lift that whale. And I 100% agree that the context is missing. We as a team, we're eager to start sharing as much as we can. Today is a first step in that direction. And I'm just hoping that we can still enjoy a bit of a patience and a trust that we're going to introduce a lot of other elements, not just related to the community reviews, but broadly speaking as well. And hopefully that will help signal the direction where we're going as a community, as a project. And given how far we've gone, the 9 funding rounds, what the next 5 could look like, or the next 10, and where do we actually go from here. But I think we've hit that limit with Fund 9, and that's the break was meant to realign all of the feedback and sort of start iterating on there. And obviously Fund 10 will not address everything. We're balancing, on the one hand, ability to start as soon as possible versus what can we implement in that short period of time that actually allows us not to delay any further, because we also need to be conscious of like the role of the Project Catalyst in the wider ecosystem. And that's the fact that we're not running an active funding round is known, and we're trying to also accommodate that so that we don't have to wait any much longer. So a lot more context is coming. You're 100% right. We hear you, Tommy. And it's our every intention to start bringing those pieces of a puzzle as soon as we can. And we're very close. And today was a first step.
I mean, maybe what I could say to Tommy's point around like waiting around to see if there's a challenge available. Yeah, that's a really, really good point. And that should not be the case. There should be a home for every proposal. And actually, when you look at the data, we certainly have, and if you wanted to, you could pretty easily begin to bucket every single funded proposal into a really small number of categories. And I know this has been part of your laborious efforts as well, Tommy, and that of George and other people that care about this this factor. And then there's everything that comes left to center of that, right? Like, we only know what we know because we've been maybe exposed to it. We don't know what we don't know. So if someone was to come up with a really novel use case that sort of sits outside of the bounds of the buckets that are created, well, there should still also be a home for that to be considered, right? And we've seen the support for the miscellaneous challenge, and it would be really nice to sort of see that type of idea persist. We'll be talking about more stuff over the coming weeks for sure. Obviously, this idea of shifting away from challenges isn't obviously scheduled for Fund 10, but we're going to be talking about what the longer term picture is quite soon anyway. We do still need a miss, Vanessa. I fully agree.
Awesome, thank you, Chris.
Yeah,
we have about
maybe to pick up on Tommy's last point. Yeah, that's another really good point. Maybe a $500,000 proposal and a $1 million proposal or a $2 million multi-year proposal should not go through the same sort of process. Because in this scenario where we've got non-experts, and some people are experts, but there's an awful lot of people that are contributing opinions without being able to validate or understand whether something's technically feasible or not. For these long-term, multi-year, highly complex, really large sums, is Catalyst the best vehicle? Probably not in the current shape. Is there, with the advent of Voltaire, will there be other opportunities to look to create new types of approaches? Probably, right? So I know that that's not concretely answering the question, but we certainly understand. I think we understand the place that Catalyst and the void that fills, and where its best intentions are able to be a big support to the growth of the Cardano's ecosystem. But for large scale, multi-year, highly complex projects that then put a lot of onerous conditions onto the team, the community to maintain, project accountability, all of these sorts of things. Perhaps there needs to be another mechanism in place.
Thank you, Chris. Nin, would you like to close us out for today? What's on your mind?
Hey guys, I overall really love the changes. I think Catalyst is moving in the right direction. It's about time that we evolve, right? The structure and the ship and the vehicle. I think just a very small suggestion, and I will closing out, but instead of just community reviews, just maybe renaming it to community insights or feedback, because it's not as much about scoring as it is about, hey, providing feedback that will help proposals be more successful if they get funded to deliver faster, cheaper, more successfully, whatever, right? And that's something that voters would love to check out. Is there any constructive feedback as a voter myself that was awesome that the proposals actually looked at and implemented for the future? So thank you. Thanks everybody, excited for the changes.
Appreciate it, and everybody's contribution today, whether it's off camera, on camera, audio or text. It's been a really, really useful and valuable session, I believe. I'm looking forward to having more conversations about the proposed changes in the coming weeks. And Danny, do you want to close this out properly?
Yeah, I think that's it for today. Thank you for having a patience to actually sit through this session and sit through the town hall. I know it's a lot of time to actually go and dedicate your time out of your busy schedules and lives. So we appreciate you greatly that you were able to spend it with us. I'm hoping, as Chris said, that it's been insightful in both directions. I think I can speak on behalf of Chris and Lorenzo as well, that I think we have a lot of valuable feedback right in the direction. So we're going to consolidate all of this and maybe just to highlight that we're going to go through this feedback, then also iterate on the final or the next proposed version of this so that we can keep on moving forward. So thank you so much for your time, and we'll be seeing each other more often on topics like this and similar. So thank you again. And if you're watching online, thank you for watching as well. Have a good day.
Cheers, everybody.
Chris, are you hitting the recording? It doesn't allow me to stop it.
Sure.